I'm ready. Are you? Oh, yes, you are. I can sense it. We are all ready for the hottest podcast blending Second Life and real life. Boys and girls, it's time for the fourth wall with Paul and BK in three, two, one. Talk to me.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fourth Wall. Happy New Year. We are back and we're ready to go. We got a big guest today. I'm here alongside my podcast partner, BK. And BK, we got a big guest, something that people have been waiting for a little bit.
Absolutely. And once again, we do want to say Happy New Year and hope everybody's 26 is better than 25. But yes, this is actually a repeat because we actually ended up having two parts because we could not do a Q&A at the same time we had him on the first time. So we want to welcome back the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only Alpin Criss. Alpin, welcome back, man.
Thanks, gentlemen. It's always good to see you guys. Glad to be back on, and just hope everybody has some good questions, and I don't ramble on too much.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, actually, it's surprising. We thought we were going to get bombarded with a bunch of questions, but we really didn't. But they're actually, after looking over them, there's some really, really good questions in here, and I think you're actually going to be pleased. And they're probably going to be some lengthy answers, so I don't really think it's going to be rambling.
I hope so. I mean, this sort of format's always interesting because the number of people that know me is very limited. So I've been kind of around now for a little bit and getting to know all the new faces. But yeah, I was interested to see what questions everyone came up with, just based off of they kind of know of me, but they don't know me. So.
All right, well, let's go ahead and let's explain to everybody. Now, like I said, we thought we were going to get a lot more questions, and we do understand, RL, sometimes gets busy, sometimes slips through the cracks. You don't think about it. But I do have some people that are in here that are probably going to end up wanting to ask you some questions since they're here, so we may entertain some of those depending on how long this is going to take. So you ready?
Sure, yeah, I'm open to it.
All right, so question number 1 and 2, but we had them to only submit individual one-sentence questions because we have a fan of ours who's notorious for 15-part questions.
Mike.
So you
A through G question, yeah.
Right. All right. So your first set of questions come from Striper Viper. Question number 1. If you do come back, and if anybody doesn't remember, when we spoke to you the first time, you said that you were actually considering coming back. So these questions were asked after the first episode. So, we kind of have to tie that in. But it says, if you do come back, wow. What 10 wrestlers would you face right away, and what Fed would you choose?
Well, that's always a loaded question. That's interesting. Basically what's as far as which 10 guys I would wrestle, it depends on the Fed.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and it depends how the Fed owners and promoters would want to use me.
Okay.
I'm not going to go in and tell them, kind of who to make me wrestle or whatever. And so if I get approached by anybody, then I'd be happy to have that discussion. As far as a list of 10, all the classics, everybody that I've seen and known, from just looking at the list of people that are kind of floating around here, Drewski, you got Baza, you got Mad Mike, you've got, pretty much any of the guys that I've been seeing, around Premier kind of floating around have been nice to meet them. And at some point I'd like to wrestle some of them, but, overall, I would just say, as far as the Feds go, I think it's great because a lot of people are wrestling multiple Feds. So, I know a lot of guys over at VWE. I know some guys that are at DCWF. I know guys at LPW. I know a lot of those guys. So, when I'm available, it'd be nice to be able to wrestle all over the place. So that would be kind of like a not specific answer because I didn't have a list prepared, but pretty much everybody that's floating around that I know would probably be at the top of that list.
So, so basically, you could say it would be like an open invitation. Whoever says yes, okay.
Basically, I mean, for me, when I'm looking at it, it's just, I think if a promoter were to approach me, it would be kind of in a situation of, well, who do you have that stylistically or thematically would go well against my character? Obviously I'm old school, so, I'd probably be out of the furry leagues because I'm not, notorious for not doing, not allowing the furries to wear their furry avatars when they wrestled at SLCW. Because to me, I'm kind of trying to relive kind of the human fed type thing. So, but that being said, all the main guys and all the new guys would be open game. I'm open to wrestle anybody. I'd love to do more, non-taped stuff. And, if any random events were to pop up where it wasn't taped or wasn't anything serious, if anybody wants to wrestle around, I'd love to jump in there and wrestle with them. Once my system is getting to the point where you can do full matches, which we're very close to that. So
Yeah, it's a great system.
No, I'm not gonna lie to you. I hadn't had a chance to play around with it yet. Been kind of engrossed in some wrestling activities myself.
Well, I mean,
All right.
like I said,
just
you
for
guys
me,
have been
real
so
quick,
busy.
to talk about the system, I don't wrestle much. I don't wrestle really much at all, very randomly, or rarely, I should say, not randomly. But me and Alpin got together a few weeks back, and he showed me a lot of it, and it really considered me to, like, you know what, maybe it's time for the scumbag superstar to get in the ring.
Oh my
There you go,
God.
Paul. You're number one
Oh
right on my list.
God. Okay. All right. Okay. Now you got me curious, and so I might have to actually test out that system today because I got to be in World later anyway. All right.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
Question.
well, I'll sit you down and walk you through some of what's open to it right now. It's coming around nicely. Like I said, the development's going to take forever, just because I keep adding stuff that we haven't really tried or done before, and I have to figure out how to even get it to happen. But the feedback has been super positive. I think people are kind of seeing what my vision is for it. So that kind of keeps me focused and keeps me grinding on it. So it does some really exciting things, and then I plan on it doing even more exciting things. But yeah, I'd love to give you a demonstration. And as far as matches
Absolutely.
goes, I mean, I think the hard thing is, you know, getting not getting ahead of myself, but as far as wrestling, I think all these guys that I see right now, all these new guys, I think it'd be fun to wrestle. If anything, just to kind of give them, get them to work kind of an older style match. I think that would be kind of interesting to step in there because I see watching some of the shows, I get to see the premiere shows a lot because they're in a time frame that's easy for me to see. And just a lot of the shows I've seen and the wrestlers I've seen, again, it's stylistically a lot more modern, a lot more fast paced, a lot more, diving, jumping, rolling type spots, and to kind of slow it down and mix that sort of style up with kind of an old school wrestler. If done right, I think that would look pretty cool. So hopefully we can get something going where we can play off of that.
Yeah, you need to pay attention Monday. All right. Question number 2 from Striper Viper. When you started in SL Wrestling, did you make your own gear or did you buy it?
There was no gear to make. What did I do? I did the blank template underwear or pants, and I shortened it so it looked like shorts, and I turned it red. I think my knee pads were the sock texture that were just up above my knees, and it was just white. Like it was nothing as near fancy as the stuff you guys have here. And I got to give a shout out to Trixie for taking me around and getting my avatar updated, which
Hey, it looks
was
good.
a amazingly complicated process, even
Yeah, I
from my
hate doing it.
standpoint.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
I
It
agree
was
with
a
that.
great. We spent all day going around SL. Trixie took me to all these great spots so that I could update my avatar, and I'm really super happy and thrilled with what she came up with.
And she didn't talk you into going furry?
What's that?
She didn't
Oh
talk to you in
no,
going break.
no. I think everybody likes the Ric Flair style avatar. Plus, I don't even know. It was expensive enough just to do this. I can't imagine what all those parts and pieces are
Oh,
for
you
those
have
things. I
no
mean,
idea. Yeah, that's
and
fine.
it's funny because I
That's
was
good.
talking to one of the guys who probably the guy who's responsible for one of the top boxing feds, and he's got his own system that he developed kind of based off the ACPWS. It's an awesome system. It's got all this like online stuff, and it's just really crazy what it can do.
You talking about Christopher?
But he was expressing to me about, he wants to make a living on Second Life, and I think I shot that down a little bit from my standpoint, because I was like, I don't think you make a living making stuff for people to do. Um, but if you sold like the body parts, or if you sold like the avatars, that's where you're going to make a ton of money on here. So I'm sure those people are just hand over fist, because I think one avatar people are spending like 35, 50,000 Linden on. It's just, it's crazy how much they put into these things.
I
Yeah,
agree
it
with that.
really is. Yeah. All right. So our next question comes from Revolution. Kind of a long one, but you'll get it.
Sure.
At the time, during the beginning, and perhaps even in 2025, have you and the folks that you've worked with over the creation of the wrestling system ever thought about bringing it into other virtual worlds, such as MView or There, or even Roblox or Sansar, if any has made it easier to make it?
Wow, that's a great question. I wouldn't be shocked if there wasn't something in those other virtual worlds. I know back in the day there was something called Open World that was kind of a competitor for Second Life for a little bit, and they were trying to advertise how much cheaper and that it would be to be on there, and how you could get Sims for a lot less, and that was kind of a competitor. I think a few people dabbled with doing things in that world, but I haven't. I've pretty much been exclusive with Second Life, because I just don't have the time to get into all those other games and all those other worlds and figure out how they work.
Okay. Well, don't know if you're paying attention in our Discord chat, but actually, Mad Mike said that he had someone to approach him about VR chat.
Yeah, I mean, I did a Google search when I was trying to see, one, if Second Life was even still around when Mike contacted me, and a few of those things popped up. They're very popular. I just don't know, because with Second Life, they created a actual scripting language that you can learn. It's kind of like a simplified programming code. So dummies like me can do stuff on it. But for some of those other programs, I don't know how complicated it is to program for Roblox. Again, I know I make things happen on here, but it's mostly by luck and chance that I do that. I'm not a programmer. I'm not a computer guy, really, in real life. So I just kind of fumble around until stuff works. And somehow I've learned enough over time of the scripting language for Second Life that I can get some pretty cool stuff to happen. But I don't hold myself out as a programmer. I don't know C++ and all that stuff, or Python. So I'm not going to sit there and be able to go to Roblox or any of these things and translate those skills. So
So
it's
do you
pretty much
think?
my programming experience is based on Second Life, and that's kind of where I'm comfortable.
So do you think with AI getting as powerful as it has by the minute, basically, that there'll eventually be something you can write a script in AI and will create stuff for Second Life? I'm sure it's probably out there already if people tried, but you ever
Yeah,
think
I mean,
about that?
I think that already goes on. I've actually been using Grok to help me with the ACPWS. So it's one of those things where, if there's something that's complicated, that, what happens with me is I get a lot of stack heap errors, which is basically I'm using too much memory. So I'll do my script, and then I'll, for my system or whatever, for some function of my system, and then it basically breaks. And then I'll usually go to Grok and copy and paste it and be like, okay, I'm a dummy. Tell me how to make this work without using up all the memory.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
it sounds
already
like
there.
what happened to me.
Yeah, I created this wrestling simulator thing on Grok, like just messing around, and it was or on ChatGPT, and it's actually pretty cool. Actually, it actually works. I was shocked.
Yeah, I think the potential for those things is again, like, I don't think you can go into you can't go into Grok or whatever and not have an idea of kind of what you're doing. But since I kind of already have a base understanding of what the programming language is for Second Life, and I kind of understand what I'm trying to do and I can make it happen, then I can sharpen it up. And I can, okay, this is kind of how I've been doing it. And then I can copy and paste my code and be like, okay, is there a better way to do this? Is there something that's more efficient? Those sorts of things I think Grok helps with.
Yeah.
If you're trying to learn basic stuff, I think something like Grok or Chat GPT can actually teach you kind of a lot faster than I learned probably how to do the basic stuff. Like if you're saying, hey, help me make a script doing X, Y, Z, and then you go to those AIs and you can be like, walk me through the steps on how to do this. And it could probably help you. The problem is I've run into is they're not 100% accurate. So they'll make stuff up that doesn't actually work. And then if you don't know enough about the like Linden scripting language to catch that, you won't understand why the script isn't working when you copy and paste it in World. So, you kind of have to have enough knowledge where you can kind of see where the AI is making errors, and you can kind of guide it and get it through that process. But, the process of making something like my wrestling HUD is, I joke about it all the time, and I've told several people it's like I add something new and it breaks everything I already had on the HUD. So it's a very lengthy process where you add one thing, one little function, and it breaks everything else, and you got to go back through and try and fix everything you already had working. And I think that kind of frustration, I think, kind of probably keeps people from developing stuff that don't have a great programming background, because I think you have to get kind of immune to the fact that you're going to be reworking on stuff over and over and over again, because that's just the process of developing it, at least in my experience and a few people I've talked to. I'm sure if I was an actual coder that it would be probably smoother, but it's a rough process for me.
The one thing it bothers me with AI is you see a lot of it, people on SL Wrestling using it as far as storylines, storytelling. And I feel that it takes away the natural creativity that people have. You know what I mean? Like, I always used to tell people, like,
I
with
think
the story,
AI is good for, like, I would say using it for like brainstorming.
Yeah, it is good for that. It's good for that.
Using it like, if you got an idea kind of already in your head and you're trying to flesh it out, I think it'd be great. But if you're going in and just saying, hey, here's a list of my wrestlers and, come up with a storyline.
It don't know them.
Do it. But like you said, I think there's a way to use it that doesn't hurt the creative process. But I think a lot of people, if they're being lazy or they're just not creative at all, then they're going to have problems and just copy and paste whatever it's been done.
The one thing I did the one time I was writing a storyline, this was like almost a year ago. And, usually the standard in SL Wrestling is 8 weeks for like a single storyline. Like I wrote 7 out of the 8 weeks and I had like something for week 6, let's say. And I'm like, and I hit a roadblock, man. I was thinking, I'm like, that don't make sense. That don't make sense. So I wrote the whole storyline in AI and I'm like, give me a bunch of options for week 6. And it gave me like 10 options. And I'm like, all right, like now it's just like, all right, some of these ideas are good. And then kind of take them out and create my own thing with it. You know what I mean? Using the ideas that they got, like you said, brainstorming. And I think it's perfect for that. The thing that it's a pet peeve of mine, and I'm not, disparaging anyone from using AI, but I think it just takes away, like, your character best. You should have some ideas of where you think your character should go. And using AI kind of takes that creativity away. You know what I mean? I think it's just, I've had one person send me a storyline like, yeah, I just wrote this. And I'm like, I literally just gave you the storyline, what we're doing. How did you write it in less than 10 minutes? And, it was all AI. It's like, oh man, it's just kind of like, I think we could do something better than this.
I mean, it's like with kids and that, I'm sure, the cheating in school now is off the charts because kids just copy and paste off that. So it's human nature. I mean, it's a tool. Like I said, my experience is it's actually not very good if you don't already have an idea what you're doing, so like you said, if you copy and paste and give it a detailed explanation of what you want, whether it's your storyline or whatever, and you're like, hey, here's where we're going, give me I'm having trouble on step 6 of 8, and you say, help me out with this, and then it gives you a list, and that's great. That's kind of how I use it. But if it's like, it's just like somebody doing a script. Like if you like, let's pick something like simple, like let's say you're trying to do like we do with the local and target animations for like a wrestling HUD. Like you could go in there and say, hey, do the local target animation. I want to animate 2 avatars, and here's the name of the animations, and make it function like this. That works, but it in the end, you're not going to be able to recreate like the Prime HUD doing
Right.
that. You have to have some basic knowledge where, what AI should do is help you make the Prime HUD or the ACPWS faster. You're not going to be able to make it from scratch if you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's just too complex, and that's where I think I could see wrestlers using it to make their own promos for themselves, and
Yeah.
not really, kind of being lazy that way. But at the end of the day, it just depends what experience you want on here. I mean, some people, want to have that full hands-on, live the pro wrestler lifestyle, and they are smart enough and they're creative enough to be able to come up with their own promos. And then it might help those people that aren't quite as sophisticated, and that's kind of one of the things that I think AI may help. It may bring the people that struggle at writing their own stuff, or figuring out what they need to say, and help them kind of say something that isn't going to be lame or stupid. So
Yeah, like you said, it's a tool, and it should be used. I think it should be used more as a tool than as doing everything for you. You know what I mean? Like I that's just my. Look, I'm just talking about wrestling storyline wise. I'm not talking about all the other stuff. But yeah, I agree with
it
you.
applies to everything. I mean, it's all kind of the same thing. If you're trying to plan a match, you can go into that and say, hey, here's a match. Here's some of the moves I do, and here's my opponent, and write us a match, a spot for spot. If you could easily talk an AI into doing that. But is it going to be a good match? I don't know. It probably is going to be better than a bad match, but it's also not going to be a great match. You know what I mean? Like, I think it'll raise the bar on the low end, but it's probably not going to help the bar at the high end, because the high end people can already do it.
Yep.
Like, I'm sure the scripting type stuff, like if you got a real programmer in here, like they could use AI, but they're not going to, for the simple stuff or whatever that I'm trying to do, they probably could just knock it out in 2 seconds. But
Yeah.
for me, it helps to have like I said, have kind of the backup. Once I get an idea working on Second Life, I can go through and use the AI to make it cleaner and not use up so much memory, so I can add more and more stuff. Like I would not be able to make the HUD as complex as it is even today without the help of the AI to help me trim it down so that it can function the same way, but not eat up all the memory. Because one of the things that anyone who creates an SL discovers is how limited it is. So, you're always running into the borders of what you can do, and you're trying to push that envelope, but it's very easy to run into those borders very quickly, because it's just, by design, it's meant to be simpler stuff. And for some of those other games like Roblox and that, I have no idea. I mean, I've heard of some complex stuff on those worlds, so I would assume, some of those might be better than Second Life as far as the type of programming you can do and how much stuff you can get away with.
Okay. All right. So your next set of questions is from Charlie Dufield.
Oh, nice.
All right. He says, number one, he says, you already spoke about how you felt to see SL Wrestling still around, but more specifically, what is your reaction to DCWF still being around?
Well, them and VWE, I mean, I just, it's just the way the world works. It's like, I was not surprised at all that they're still around. Because they've already stood the test of time. Even when I left, they'd already been around, and so many generations of feds have come and gone and come and gone. And, that one's stuck around. So I don't want to say there's momentum or inertia, but to me, it's, when you see like a VWE or an SLCW, DCWF, they've been around so long, they've already survived so much. It's kind of hard to imagine what would actually take them out, other than Second Life just closing up shop altogether. And even then, I would think a lot of the people on here would just jump to some other thing and try to recreate it. you know, and if there was ever an impetus for us to go to another virtual world, that would probably be it. It's just, you know, Second Life or something would shut down or say they're shutting down. And so we'd all look for a second place to do this because, you know, it's like, it's, you know, that's one of the amazing things is, you know, how big this is in a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, some people have taken to extreme where SL's taken over their lives at some point. It has come to that point. So yeah, we've heard those stories and how big everything's become, and yeah, we completely get it and understand. Well, don't understand the obsession with it, but completely get it because there was a time where I was spending like 8 to 9 hours a day in SL, just losing track of time. So I can see how that would happen.
Well,
All
I
right.
think everybody has those stories. I mean, you know, I think these virtual worlds are a net positive, but I've seen and I think we've all seen kind of the dark side of them. And that is where, you know, people's real lives get consumed by the game. And, you know, that's one of the things where I always had trouble when I had friends on here who were younger. Um, you know, because when I'd see them and they'd be on the game, you know, 4, 5, 6 hours a day, and you know, I'd see them online or whatever. Every time I popped on, I'm like, you know, you're in your teens or whatever. You need to be out, you know,
Right.
bird dog and chicks. So you don't need to be sitting here online just hanging out with online people all the time.
Yeah, right. All right. Charlie's second question. He says, aside from figuring out the animations, what would you say was the biggest hurdle you faced getting this off the ground, meaning your HUD?
Um, that's a great question. I mean, in retrospect, it's weird because it's like one of those things where you're right time, right place. So I don't remember there ever being hurdles. It's like every solution just presented itself, you know, and even making the animations, it was just one of those things where if we already had a template of where to go, I mean, you know, you watch a wrestling match, you know, the spots. So, you know, it was just, I wish I could say there was this huge struggle to come up with the system initially, but it wasn't a struggle other than just, you know, kind of doing the search and taking the time to find the pieces, you know. But, you know, at that time we still had Google. You didn't have the AI backup like you have now, but we had Google, and it's like quick Google search would say, you know, for me was like, you know, how do you animate for Second Life? And it's like, oh, use QAvimator, which was popular back then, or at least it was for us people who aren't professional
Hey,
animators. So,
you stick with what you know.
oh yeah. And so it's like one of those things where, you know, again, if you're on this game and you're not spending a lot of money on this game, which, you know, looking at everybody's avatar, everyone here spends a lot of money on this game. But But back when we were making our wrestling tights out of the default texture for your underwear,
I'm sorry.
um,
That kills me.
I know,
I know
yeah,
what you're talking about. I know what you're
I
talking
had the
about.
boot. They had a boot texture layer. It wasn't even like a prim boot or mesh boot. Mesh wasn't even a thing. So you just had like this boot layer, and you could like recolor it basically using just the basic color menu. Is stuff like that was, you know, it's barbaric compared to what we have now on here,
Right.
but yeah, no, as far as developing the system, like the animations and stuff, it all just came together really organically and it came together really easily, you know, like figuring out stuff like how to go through the ropes, you know, sending the chat signal for the ropes, like that stuff just happened and it happened so smoothly. I don't even remember exactly when in the process, but it was very early on. And so a lot of the pieces to the systems that we use now came really early on just because it's like, oh, of course that's how you do it. Of course that's how you do it. You know, so it was, you know, the only things I think I added that were really unique were, you know, like with my animations, I would say, you know, when you looked at a lot of the animations for combat sports, you didn't have any of the selling, like the injury stuff, and you didn't have any of the breathing. So like, if you watch my animations, you know, and Mad Mike, don't sit here and get on here and say how crappy they are. At least I can say like they did cool things like, you know, after a guy got knocked down, I looped the animation so he's staying on the mat, breathing heavy, or rolling around on the mat, grabbing an injured body part. Like it didn't just like a lot of the animations back then, believe it or not, you'd hit the ground and pop right back up to your feet because the animation would end and there's no animation for you being on your back. And that's basically how they would go. You know, like, so like there'd be these people that are spending $10,000 on these combat HUDs where it'd be like karate and all this other stuff. And they were basically the same thing. It did multi-animate, you know, kind of like a hugger. You get like little blue prompt, like, would you accept being hugged by this person? And you'd click yes. And then they do a wrestling move and you do the move, pop right back up. And for me, like I added those loops where it was like, oh, the guy stays on the ground. Oh, the guy's breathing heavy. Looks like he's hurt. You know, like to me, that's the nuances of pro wrestling. I guess you'd call it emoting, but that is what real pro wrestling is. It's not the moves themselves. It's not the chops or the wrist locks or whatever. That's part of it. But the other part is making it believable, and the faking breathing heavy, the grimacing, all that stuff is stuff that I tried to get in as much as I could in the world of Second Life to help make it more natural.
All right, a lot of interesting information going on here.
Very interesting.
All right, now you mentioned him a second ago. As far as the questions that were submitted, your last two questions are actually from Mad Mike.
Awesome.
You ready?
Oh yeah.
Strap in, Alpin.
All right.
I'm waiting for him.
All right. It says, out of all the time you had away from SL, now you come back and you've been able to talk to people, see feds, etc. Maybe heard of recent controversies or rumor mills. What is your impression of SLPW's future?
I think the future is great. I mean, you know, so long as people are still coming to this world, I think people are going to find their way into the Second Life wrestling scene. And from what I've seen, you know, all you guys putting all this great content out, whether it's the YouTube videos or like you guys with this Fourth Wall podcast, it just draws more people in. As far as the drama, I mean, that stuff was always there. It was there when there was only one fed. It was there when there was 3 feds. It's there when there's 7 feds. I mean, you know, it just, you know, people just, it's part of the experience, I think, of this being a social, you know, online virtual social world. People are going to have these sorts of disputes and they're going to butt heads because unfortunately that's part of the friction of being human beings. So as far as the drama, it happens. But as far as the overall Second Life Pro Wrestling, it just, you know, and again, it's just people, you know, like to buy on their avatars and spend all the stuff on his avatars. But there's a class of people on here who get on Second Life. They want something to do, not just something to wear. And that sort of people will always be searching out what's the cool stuff to do. And, you know, again, I haven't been around Second Life other than around the wrestling because I just don't have the time to tour around everything. But, you know, whether it's wrestling or boxing or whatever stuff is out there, you know, when they find something that resonates with them, it is, they're going to join it and stick around. And, you know, I hate to say it, I still think pro wrestling is one of the things that resonates with the most people, even over those legitimate sports. So, and it translates so well into the type of thing we're doing here. So I think the future is bright, you know, so long as there's people that are on here and getting together and wanting to put on wrestling shows. I mean, there'll always be some fed going and there'll always be people in and out the door. But, you know, the amazing thing to me is how many people stuck around for, you know, a decade and a half. I mean, that to me is the amazing thing.
Well, one of the things Bill said about professional wrestling, and even and Vince McMahon Jr. said it. He said wrestling is the working man's soap opera.
Yep.
You have a story, you have a beef with somebody, but the difference between a soap opera and wrestling is the people actually get in the ring and quote unquote handle business, and that's what attracts everybody. Because, you know, one of the biggest things they were talking about for the Monday Night Wars was the whole, you know, catching the lightning in the bottle with Vince McMahon and Steve Austin, that whole thing. Because they said, you know, who doesn't get mad at their boss and doesn't want to, you know, punch your boss out? Who doesn't want to go home and have a beer at the end of the day? It's something that people can actually relate to. That's why I think it's stuck around so long, even though here lately it has been dropping dramatically because it's getting really stupid.
I don't know, because I mean, it's funny because, like, you know, in your guys' chat group, you know, there's a few guys that are kind of more, you know, modern wrestling or whatever type guys. And one of the things that struck me when I was doing some research was apparently the actual numbers were declining going through the Attitude Era. And I know I know they, the pay-per-view numbers and all that, since that was a new format, were through the roof, but the actual numbers for the house shows, for the actual attendance and all that, was declining through that period. So I think there's this kind of, when you look at the numbers, there's kind of this myth actually that, that era was the hottest era of pro wrestling. I think it was the hottest for the pay-per-views and kind of for like a certain generation and age group, but even by then it was in the decline. And so, it's kind of interesting because, like, again, like when you look at like the territory days where, especially me being from St. Louis, it's like, that was like as big as Cardinals baseball, if not bigger. And, for anybody who's got a major sports team that's really beloved in your hometown, to think about your local wrestlers like Dick the Bruiser and them, like they were as big in St. Louis as, as Mark McGuire or any of those famous Cardinals, for a good 30 or 40 years. And then, now, I mean, you could walk around the town and you don't even know if there's wrestling going on, and you can ask people who the world champion is for WWE, and I'll bet you, you're going to get one out of 20 is going to be able to answer that question.
I can't answer the question because I quit watching wrestling years ago. Actually, I kind of quit watching wrestling after, like, right at the end of the Ruthless Aggression era, like back in the early 2000s. I hadn't really watched wrestling in almost 20 years.
See, you're exactly, and I don't know if I'm breaking the format. Am I allowed to ask a question? Because you guys are exactly my kind of age range. So, is your experience, I think, is very similar to mine, because I think we were kind of a demographic that saw the end of the territory days, saw the 80s, WCW 80s, WWF, and then we also saw the Attitude Era. Mm-hmm. And we were kind of like a prime target audience during all those years. Now, obviously, we kind of aged out of what their target audience is, but I kind of feel like we were the main generation that kind of rode that wave. And so that wave's kind of trickled down. And, because when I talk to guys like kind of in our age range, it's like, it's all the same story. I stopped watching around 2000, 2005, somewhere in that range. It's just, and I still love pro wrestling. It's like, I don't know what your guys' experience is.
It's easier. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Paul.
It's easier now to follow it without watching it, I think, because with social media, with YouTube, like where before, let's say the Attitude Era. Let's go back to that. I mean, the best thing about the Attitude Era was going back and forth, flipping the channels, right? When something stupid was going on with WWE, let's see what WCW's doing, and vice versa. Now it's just like, all right, I can just go on X or YouTube after the show and see all the good things that happen. Like, you know what I mean? I don't need to see all the matches that were just thrown together. I can see the highlight reel of all the cool things that happen. And all right, I'm all set. I'm up to date on it. I don't need to sit for 3 hours on Netflix and watch it. Whereas before, it's like I was the same way as BK. Like, I watched it religiously, probably from, early 80s. I would watch it religiously when I was a kid. NWA, stuff like that. I couldn't get enough of. I remember going to the mall with my mom, and in one of the kiosks, they were selling wrestling tapes. And I made my mom buy me like 2 VHS Memphis Championship Wrestling tapes, Georgia Championship Wrestling tapes. And I couldn't get enough of it. And then, the cartoon era came, which I like to call, where you had everyone was an occupation. Like, you had trash men, you had, guy from Australia who was an outback, you had a farmer.
Big farmer.
Yeah, like I would still.
Old McDonald.
It was like now I'm a teenager. I'm interested in girls, and I'm dating girls, and it was always my little secret. Hey, I can't make it out till tonight because I wanted to watch, wrestling or whatever. But like I fell out of it because of that, and then it came back in with the Attitude Era, and it's like you guys would same thing, BK. Like after 2005, it was like, wow, this is getting really corny again. You know what I mean? And then just kind of got away from it a little bit. And then once social media came, it was like, all right, now you can keep up to it without actually watching and sitting, devoting 75 hours a week into watching wrestling.
Yeah. And like with me, I started before Paul did. I started in the late 70s and watched with my grandfather. And this has been mentioned before, but I know, Alpin, you didn't know we existed until a couple months ago. So we know you didn't get all caught up. But with me, I grew up watching Memphis wrestling, or as most people know it now, as USWA. Jerry Lawler was down there, and I watched people come up through there. I watched Mark Calloway before he was The Undertaker. I watched Sid Vicious before he was Psycho Sid. I watched Kurt Angle come through there because, the contract that Vince had with him. And I watched it, and at that time there was no such thing as pay-per-views. So the only way that you could watch it is you watch it on Saturday. And then if you wanted to see what happened, you had to go to Memphis and go to the Mid-South Coliseum and watch it, because it was like the show would happen Saturday. They would build stories up for weeks at a time, and then, hey, this Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum, this is what you're going to see. So you had to go see it live, or you had to wait until Saturday again and watch what was going on.
What
so
happened?
they made it very believable, because it's like you didn't have so much access, as has been said, here just a little bit ago by Paul. Too much access has watered it down.
Yeah.
There's no mystery anymore. I have no issues with people using their real names, because I give credit to the NWO for coming out and doing that. I really, really do. I've got no problem, but we don't need to know every single aspect of their lives. You need to have something to make people want to watch it. You have to give me a reason to watch it. And I'm not bragging on myself, but like in PW right now, LG and I have a really good storyline going on. We've had people to tell us, it's really interesting what you're doing. They're invested because of the story, because we're not letting anything leak. We're not, and the way that things are being done over there, there's not, nobody knows, in all honesty, the way that it's set up is nobody really knows what's happening until the show comes out, even the performers. All they do is say, hey, this is when you're going out, this is what you do. Nobody knows. And that makes people pay attention, and that's what we were wanting. And that's what sorry about that.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. I actually heard those a few days ago myself. But anyway, but to me, it's, and I'm going to say this, I have no issue with wrestling evolving. I understand and making it exciting. Like the first time I ever saw a lucha wrestle, somebody who jumped off the top rope, that was freaking amazing.
Yep.
To see somebody fly through the air, and that, okay, you're evolving. But now everybody's doing the same thing everybody else does. Nobody's really standing out. Nobody's making you want to watch anymore, because nobody cares about the stories. They're all wanting to be, okay, I want to be the number one guy, number one girl. What's the quickest way I can get there? Instead of earning it, they wanted to hand it to them.
But here's one thing I want to say.
Watered down. I think there's so many belts and stuff. It's just like, there's like a million. I mean, I had that problem with, even in the Attitude Era, I started doing the hardcore belt and this belt and that belt. It's like, oh Jesus, there's another belt. Like every 6 months they're adding a new championship, and it's like, I can't track enough of these guys. Whatever. Let's just have, a couple belts. Tag team. Let's have the world championship, and then you do like whatever they called it, the junior world championship or the USA belt or whatever you want to call it. And it's, that was enough to keep track of. But even now it's, I had the same experience right around the 2000s, like I think is when I kind of fell out, and it wasn't because I didn't love wrestling. And, actually what kind of brought me back to my love of wrestling is watching old stuff on YouTube and these websites where you can go buy not the tapes. That's how you know how old we are. We know what a VHS tape is.
Tapes are the best.
Yeah, they are.
Oh yeah. We've all owned those VHS.
All right. Let me say one thing.
You can record your own.
As far as people who are listening, go back in Memphis Championship Wrestling and watch the Andy Kaufman Jerry Lawler feud. I remember watching it as a kid, and even now as an adult, it still looks real. Now, like how well that played off. Go watch that on YouTube.
And I will tell you, I watched that every single week when it developed, when it first started all the way until the very end. Go and watch those clips first. And if you have not seen the movie Man on the Moon, where Jim Carrey plays the Andy Kaufman part, yeah, they did a little bit more Hollywood stuff to it. But then when you go, you'll actually understand how that actually, it's great. It really, really is.
Yeah, he was a huge wrestling fan. You talk about heel 101 and how to portray yourself as a heel. Oh man, go watch Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, and the thing about it was he wasn't even a wrestler; he was an actor, and he was really, really good at it.
All right, and he understood, and again, I think if you understand the basic building blocks of wrestling, you can tell a story in any era, and those are the ones that last. That's kind of why I get critical of some of the guys when I talk to them, and they're like, "Oh, I'm a tweener," or I'm not really a heel or baby face. I'm like, you pick one, pick a road. If you're gonna make a match. somebody's got to be the heel, somebody's got to be the baby face. There is a
Yeah.
way, there's a
Well,
plot. You know, you
well,
got to
see,
follow. You can play on it, but you got to follow the road. Otherwise, the audience doesn't know what the heck's going on.
well, see, like,
Um,
but with me, it's like people, very surprisingly, or it's not surprising. Like with me, people know that I'm going to be me no matter what. So all I do is like, okay, put me in a storyline, tell me what you need me to do, and I go out there and I'm just me. I let the audience decide if they're going to stand behind me or not. They don't stand behind me. Sure, I got a few words for you. You going to stand behind me? Okay, I got some words for you. I just let them decide because I don't like to do I don't like to insult people's intelligence by making them say, this is who you have to like, this is who you don't have to like. This, let them choose. And that's all I do. I just go out there and be myself, like, with this, like I said, with this story that I'm in with LG. All I did is went out there and just did myself. And I had people, telling, booing me and what, okay, fine. At least there's a reaction going. I don't care.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, you tried to get the heat, whatever it is. But my criticism is more generally like if you're going to do pre-planned matches, like I think what you're talking about is great if you go out there and you kind of have an idea which way you're going. Again, I just when I see some of the matches, I'll see some of the matches and everyone's doing heel spots, and I'm like, well, who the hell's the baby face? And it's like everybody's doing these heel spots and nobody's being the baby face. I'm like, I don't know who's really the person that's supposed to win here. I'm supposed to like to win. It's one of those things where
that's the toughest part
I was
about
actually,
SL Wrestling. That's the toughest part, what you're just saying, trying to
I think it's
convince.
modern wrestling too,
Yeah.
isn't it? I mean, that's the
Well,
criticism I
yeah,
often
true.
see about modern wrestling is they just, and that was kind of my criticism of the Attitude Era. If we go back and look at that, it's like, yes, it works in specific places, but at the end of the day, if you have to follow the formula for most of the program for it to be an exception that stands out for an exceptional match. And it's like, if every match ends in the guy through the flaming table, then who cares about the flaming table? What the hell? And then people go, what the hell am I even watching? Like, is this wrestling? Like, if you do the guy through the table or whatever, and it's, the 30 matches leading up to that is by professional wrestling rules, the guy who broke the rules and threw the guy through the table is the bad guy. It's like,
You're right. You can't tell. In
watering it down.
In today's era, and like let's look at today's era, Cody Rhodes. In the 80s, he would have been a heel because like he dresses like everything about him is Ric Flair. You know what I mean? But people cheer
that style.
Yeah.
And people cheered Ric Flair too. I mean, he had if he did like a Nikita Koloff run, he'd be babyface. He'd still be heel-ish. He's still going to run his match, his style. But at that point, he was over, and it's like, he can do the Flair spots that are kind of heelish and play the baby face, and people still get behind him. But that's after 15 years of being playing
the dirtiest player in the game. He comes out
exactly.
told you I am the dirtiest player in the game, and people knew what to expect, and they would still cheer.
Yeah, and he'd build it up, over years so that people would accept that. But nobody wants to start out as a jobber is the problem. Nobody wants to go out there and just be like, okay, put over a match, you're going to lose. You get one little comeback spot, and then, you're going to get a chance to show what you can do. And then the rest of the time you're just kind of selling. And it's like, we need more of those. That's why I always push for, I'd love to see more just like, whatever you call them, dark matches where it's not taped or pre-taped. And there's just people doing wrestling events that are a little less formal so that they can get ring experience doing matches that aren't just, we're trying to match the high production value of the TV shows where, even then I think a criticism would be they try to get too much out of those matches. There aren't enough just regular matches to set up the rules, to set up the expectations of the audience. So when they just do spot after spot, it becomes just like a stunt show because they haven't built up the world or the rules by which the world operates. And so the fans don't really understand, especially the old school fans, they don't really understand what the hell's going on. And it no longer feels like pro wrestling. And the thing that felt like pro wrestling was, you knew the 20 count out spot. You knew the 10, if you're in St. Louis, the 10 count out spots on the apron. The you know the kind of rules, and you know when a heel breaks the rules, and you know that's the bad guy because he's the one breaking the rules. And now it's like I've seen matches and clips in modern matches, that people have posted, and it's like, what the hell do they even have a ref for? Other than to slap the mat a couple times, they're breaking every damn rule in the sport. If it is a sport, then I don't know what this guy's doing with the shirt. He's just standing there watching these guys hit each other with furniture for about 20 minutes. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Can't follow it. You lost me, guys.
Well, I think that's kind of what one of the issues that happened with during the Monday Night Wars was ECW, as we all know, and I don't care what anybody says. ECW was the originator of the extreme, the hardcore that brought it. I mean, yeah, you heard about the matches with like Cactus Jack, the what was it, the barbed wire match, the infamous barbed wire match he had with the exploding barbed wire cables and all that. Yeah.
Tourist muscle.
Coal miner glove matches, that sort of thing, even back in the territory days that were kind of specific to regional areas.
Right.
And again, it's fine to do those matches if they're done. It's like I don't want to say Hell in a Cell, cage match. Why do you do a cage match? There used to be a formula. There used to be a reason. Why do you do a cage match? You got the heel that refuses to lose and always gets himself counted out. He's got the championship belt or whatever. The babyface can't beat him because he's breaking the rules. So what happens? You throw him in a cage because he can't get counted out if he can't get out of the damn ring. There's a cage. Or you have a faction where there's 3 or 4 members and it's a heel faction, and they're every time the heel's going to lose, the main heel, the other guys rush in, interfere with the match, and the babyface loses. And it's like one of those things where, well, how does the babyface get a chance to win? How do you even the odds? Throw a cage up so the guy's friends can't help him anymore. Then it's just finally after, like Paul said, after 8 weeks of watching this heel, dodge, dart, or cheat his way into not losing to the baby face, you get to that point where now he's trapped. Now he's in a cage. Now there's a baby face, and there's no way to go, and the baby face is the stronger guy. What's going to happen? That's just the simple storytelling that we used to have that we don't have anymore. Now it's a cage match just because cage matches are cool. And it's like, And then there's 5 cage matches in one event. And it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like,
But it's too now
there's reasons behind that stuff. You just got rid of the whole lead up. They copy pasted the end of the sentence. They didn't do the 8 weeks build up of how you get to that point and why it's important to have that cage match,
But now you don't now when you see a cage match, the whole thing is, all right, who's jumping off the top of that cage? Now that's what people expect. You know what I mean? Like something crazy is going to happen.
Copy pasting a spot that was done 30 years ago now. And it's just, and again, it's like that stuff's going to evolve. So yeah, you're going to have the high spot that everybody wants to copy and mimic, but it's like, why was there a ladder match? People think ladder matches just sprung into existence. There's a ladder match because there used to be the coal miners glove matches or the money matches where they'd hang the sack of money in the corner and you'd have to climb the corner to get it. Well, then they added a ladder. There's a ladder match, and the famous ladder match between Razor Ramon and HBK is because there were 2 belts. And they were combining, they had to fight to get 2 belts. And, it's like, well, we could either just have a regular match or let's suspend the 2 belts over. I mean, I think everybody gets that. The guy that wants to unify the belts has to pull both the belts off the ring and find a way to do it. There you go, ladder match. Now it's like there's ladders, chairs, and everything else that they started getting into, or they're throwing all the furniture in there, recliners, easy boys, I don't know. And it's like, just, there was a reason for that stuff. And if you just do it with the reason and purpose, it makes more sense. But, if you get rid of the rules, you get rid of the sport aspect of it, then it just looks like you're doing random stuff. And then it becomes, just a spot fest basically. And it's, not as interesting to me, maybe, and there are people it does appeal to, but not me. I preferred the, as fake as it was to watch Dusty Rhodes do his stupid, jiving, fat boy hip wiggling and, circling his hands and throwing a punch, it looked like a Mike Tyson punch out type of thing. And as silly as that is, I'd rather watch that than watch something where it doesn't make any sense why this match is happening at all.
It was
You know,
simpler.
it's like,
Simpler. It was simpler back then.
yeah,
You know,
I
it was
believe
very
that
simple.
his system just keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Well, you know, there was some hokiness in the old stuff, and that criticism
Well, yeah.
is true. You know, but I'm like, I still like that because at least I could follow the rules and I kind of knew what was happening. And it's like, you know, it just, you know, and I don't feel like those rules were replaced with anything better. That's the thing. Like everybody assumes it evolved better, but I'm like, you guys, we had a great storytelling format. We had plot devices that everyone knew and understood. You know, even lay people who weren't wrestling fans knew and understood, and we got rid of them. And now it's like if you just tuned into wrestling and you didn't know it was professional wrestling, and you just saw people diving off stuff, you'd be like, "What the hell is this?" You know, it's like, you know, like I said, it reminds me of the old, you know, Jackass show versus wrestling. You know, them
People like
diving
that.
off of stuff and into stuff, and yeah, they do. It's popular, but it's not the same audience. It's not.
Yeah.
You know, pro wrestling fans wanted to watch pro wrestling, and there's a very, you know, for us, you know, we got to see kind of the evolution of the end of pro wrestling with all those tropes and all those story type beats and all those rules and all those things that created the pro wrestling world and that created the matches and all that. And then it kind of, they got away from it. And it was great for about 10 years when it was jazz music. You know, now it's free form. Now we can play off all those tropes. And then once the Attitude Era came to an end, I think it was over, because you can only do that so long till you lose the memory or you lose the build up. You know, just like the cage match, you know, if you do the 8-week build up and then you do the 1 week where you lead into the cage match makes sense. But if you just do cage matches every week, it don't make no sense anymore. And I think that's kind of where we've ended up.
The one thing that bothers me the most about wrestling, like, I'm glad that social media wasn't around for the Monday Night Wars, because now it's like, it's crazy to me that the fans, if you go on social media and TikTok, and I talked about this before, is I'm looking to see, it's like Thursday, you know, Thursday afternoon. I'm like, oh, you know, going through Twitter, and you see, oh, last night's show, AVW drew 655,000. Monday Night Raw on Netflix only drew 200. Like, people are so consumed now by the ratings of like, which, like, and I said this to one of my buddies before. It's like, you know, I watch Sons of Anarchy, right? Sons of Anarchy is one of my favorite shows. I didn't go the next day to tell people, be like, who like Breaking Bad, and saying, well, in the ratings, Sons of Anarchy got 2 million people. Breaking Bad only got 1.5 million. Like, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And a lot of that goes to, again, we go back to what ruined wrestling, or when wrestling got bad, is when you brought Dave Meltzer into being a major factor into wrestling now, because the star matches, like, if you go watch a match, I watch a match. The best match I ever seen in my life, or two best matches I ever seen, was Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, and then the other one was The Rock and Hogan. Now, you look at them, the reason I think that matches were great is because the anticipation to build up to that matches was amazing. So when they got in the ring, it was like, wow, it feels like a big match feel. That match just felt big match feel. The crowd was into it. Everything. Like, you look at Hulk Hogan's match, I think Dave Meltzer rated that like 1 star. But you know what? He ain't counting the fact that that match sold 95,000 tickets. He's not looking at the fact that the buildup of that match was great. Looking at the fact that they never touched each other, which makes the anticipation even bigger. It's like people got so in tune to what Dave Meltzer thinks about wrestling, and that's how they think about it. Oh, the Young Bucks, they have 5-star matches all the time, 7-star matches, and 12-star matches. Kenny Omega, all them guys, these people think that them guys are the greatest guys because they have matches. But then when you go to promos and build up to matches, it's just, they're not that good. They're not as good as a lot of these other guys who know how to sell matches, who know how to cut promos, who know how to build a story up. It's like with AVW, one of my biggest critiques of it is they really don't tell great stories. You know, in WWE hasn't done well either, but if you look at the old school stuff, NWA and Ric Flair, you know, the NWO and DX and all, like, they were all great storylines. Stone Cold and Austin, they were all great storylines, which led to them having really good matches. Again, it's my opinion.
And here's the problem again is, I think what happened is they got to the point where they cut out what made wrestling great. You know, like, you saw Andre and Hogan, but what you didn't see was the 150 house shows that they
That,
did that weren't
right,
taped
right.
that led up to that, that match and that chemistry. And it's like you hear, if you read any of the books or hear any of the interviews of any of the wrestlers from back in the day, it's like, oh yeah, we wrestled 360 days
Yeah,
a
yeah.
year,
But you didn't know that
three
back
times
then.
on Sunday.
Yeah.
And it's like, and again, it's just one of those things where I'm like, not to take anything away from the modern guys, because obviously they're very popular, but at the end of the day, they're wrestling, they haven't wrestled, even a basic, guy who had a short career back then would have wrestled hundreds, thousands of matches more than they have.
Yeah.
And in that churning, you're going to get those great storylines, but if there's no, it's again, one of the things I think we need to do more of on here is if it's all just the taped pre-planned stuff, your wrestlers are going to be stifled. And
Yeah.
your creative is going to be right. It's because you got to have, and we talked about using AI to develop people, but what happens, have some more dark matches that aren't taped so that people can get out there and wrestle and not be and push their character and push it in the wrong direction or fall flat on their face and not have it affect them overall.
Yeah, I agree
And
with
then
that.
and then let them get polished, through that experience, because we've all been on a match on here and it's just like real life. It's like somebody's going to mess something up. There's going to be SL lag or something's going to break or something's going to go wrong in the match. And, part of what makes you good at this is your ability to deal with that and keep the match flowing, And I think anybody who's wrestled on here for any amount of time can probably come up with 100 examples of stuff that happens in the middle of a match. A gesture button just randomly doesn't work, or the HUD just untargets, or like I had when I did my my charity show match, I had a bunch of animations just disappear out of the HUD, just that were there when the match started, and halfway through the match I went to run the gesture and the animations weren't in the HUD anymore. I'm like, what the heck? And it's just SL being SL, but
Yeah.
guys who have the experience can deal with that. But again, it's like if you get them out there and get them more time in the ring, even just wrestling around, which even being around some of the training areas, it's like it's great to see all the people in the ring kind of working out matches and going over spots and stuff. I think a little too much time gets spent on editing gestures and editing note cards. And I think more time needs to be done just freestyle wrestling, which I'm an advocate for. And, you kind of saw my system, Paul. That's kind of what I'm trying to get us something to be able to do, is to be able to go out and just like BK said, like go out into a ring, listen to the crowd and change the match on the fly and call the match more on the fly, like, like actual professional wrestlers used to do, and not have everything just, be kind of pre-taped or pre-programmed. So it's just, hit this macro, hit that macro, hit that macro, and the match is over.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
All right. So your last question from Mad Mike. As one of the people that basically invented this hobby, what is your advice for Fed owners, locker room leaders, anyone who has to manage other people's expectations and wants?
I actually
usually it's me that does the speechless one.
Well, it's a great question, and it's funny because like I kind of kibitz, it's great. I was at one of the feds. I'm not gonna say which one, and the fed, one of a couple of the fed guys that are running it, and owners and promoters and bookers, they're handling it. And it's kind of one of those things where the wrestlers aren't around, and I'm hearing them kind of go through all the stuff that I went through and Eric went through when we were booking, or Ivan too, when we were trying to book and run a show like SLCW. And it was one of those things where, I could just hear the fatigue and just dealing with the people's personalities and all the stuff that goes into putting on these shows. And I'm just like, that's exactly the stuff that I remember wore me down and wears everyone down eventually. What I would say is, as far as trying to manage people, I think it's always best just, understand that, you're going to have different personalities, and understand that you're not going to be here and your Fed's not going to be here to make everyone happy. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the main frustration people have is, I think they want to go over with everybody and have everybody like them. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to draw some lines in the sand. And, I'd say as far as Fed owners, people who are paying the sim cost and incurring all that, I think the big thing you need to do is realize that you're not, you're providing this space for these people to do this. And, you've got to enjoy it too. That was ultimately one of my burnout with SLCW was just, trying to make tier and do that for so long and then feeling like I didn't have as much say in what was going on with the direction SLCW was heading. And so I think those sorts of burnouts can be avoided if they're spotted early and if you kind of know, how to navigate them. But you're always going to have personalities. You're always going to have people who are on here who are taking it way too serious.
Yep.
You're also going to have people who, especially when you're this late into some of your guys' seasons, as far as your shows and stuff, it's like, I like what Premiere does where they do like a break, like they have like a season and they take a break so they can come back to it. I'm like that. God, I wish we did that back in the day, because that would have saved us a lot of frustration, because you can kind of catch your breath. But, I see some feds still just run constant shows, and they're trying to keep on that treadmill, and it's not a treadmill you can stay on, like BK said earlier, like, you'll catch yourself spending 6 hours a day on here, 8 hours a day on here, and trying to live a real life. It's like at some point you're burning the candle on both ends. So
yeah, it feels like a job sometimes. It does feel like a job sometimes.
Yeah, and part of what I always advocate for and what I always try to push for is, don't build it up to be so serious. Somebody had written a question, I think, in your guys' open mic section, and it was something like, tell us about the first few events in SLCW. Well, I'll tell you what, we didn't have video. There's no video.
There's no proof in that.
There's Ivan was on the mic. I think somebody was announcing with him. Might have been Maddie, one of those guys. I was the ref because we didn't have a ref. We had about 8 people that were going to wrestle, and we had about 16 moves. And it's like every match was the same moves, and they had to come up with a way to tell a different story. And there wasn't fireworks or technology. There wasn't, I think if we played music on one of the early shows, it was being played over the, over the microphone, or it wasn't even being streamed in. It's like that basic. And it evolved over time. As more sophisticated people came in, Eric came in and he was much more sophisticated than, Ivan and me. So he introduced us to like the ability to do like the video on the textures, and, we're able to run videos. And then you had people making custom videos, and that stuff's all cool, but it also starts eating up resources. Yep. And it's like, I'd like to see more of those simpler shows. And I think the thing that we run into is, a lot of the people who have the sophisticated shows start shitting on the people that have the simple shows. And I'm like, the simple shows have some benefit too, just because they're not doing, the Titantrons and the full videos, music videos and entrance videos and doing all that. And it's just a guy on a mic announcing. I'm like, that still works. Don't knock that out, because, I honestly think there needs to be more of that than on the real fancy production stuff, because the fancy production stuff, it just wears people out over the long run. So if you have a balance, if I were to give any advice to Fed owners, it would be balance it out. Don't make every show you do have to be this high production. I saw VWE did this great year-end show, and I was touring their little lot, and they did like a movie backlot thing. It was the coolest thing I've seen. I mean, how much detail they put into setting up this whole sim around this event. Looked amazing, fantastic. But not every event needs to be that. You can just have events that just kind of, like I said, are more like the dark matches, where you can have your wrestlers come in and they kind of experiment a little more and be a little bit less, less pre-programmed as far as, here's the storyline for this 8 weeks. Now it's just like, okay, you guys go in and, kind of have some fun, and hopefully with the, new system, and if it takes off, or if parts of it get copied, and because I think what it's going to allow is us to be able to do more like multi-man tags, and just have those matches that are less about a plot line and more about getting out there and just just doing some wrestling. And hopefully that'll open it up, because I think the targeting will help a lot with that. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just, my big advice is have fun. If you're running the Fed or you're a booker or whatever, if you find yourself thinking it's a job, take a break, let somebody else do it for a little while. It's not going to go away. You can always come back to it. And at the end of the day, have some fun. I think the thing that burnt me out is I didn't ever get out there and wrestle, and it's like, I got to the point where I'm running the Fed and I'm not doing the thing that I started this to do. And it's like, I'd love to just get out there and wrestle and not care about whether the videos are working or any of that stuff. Cause as any of you guys have ran these shows, everything breaks, everything goes wrong, and you have to deal with that. And sometimes it's nice just to be the wrestler who's standing there and not trying to put out all the fires, and not on the chat going, where's, so-and-so who's, apparently going to no show the event because real life happens. You know what I mean? Like, it's nice not having to deal with that stuff. And you can just say, hey, I'm here. I'm ready to wrestle. What am I doing?
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you get a chance to check it out, please come and check out our brand new studio over at Desert Drifters Riding Track. Really, really great. We'll be back in just a minute. Let's hear from our sponsors.
Bitch Please has teamed with Whatchamacallit. Brings you all of your clothing needs, from custom wrestling attire to everyday clothes. Established in 2007, Whatchamacallit is one of the oldest clothing stores in SL. For more information, contact Baddock Og. Custom work is available, and they have clothes for men and women.
Have you ever logged into Second Life just to spend time with that special someone? Or just to escape that headache called real life and you just can't seem to find anything to do? Well, here at Warblood City, we have got something for you. Rentable bikes for a bike ride, a cafe for that date night, or a place to catch up with friends over tea and coffee. We also have our very own movie theater, so make sure you check out what's on the big screen. Every year from the 21st of September until the 1st of November, there's Warblood City's annual Autumn Carnival, so make sure to check that out. All you got to do is go into your search bar and type in Warblood Isle. Take the teleport, and welcome to the last stop you'll need for fun. We will see you all very, very soon.
LPW, otherwise known as Limitless Pro Wrestling. Check out their shows Riot Thursday nights at 4 p.m. SLT. Then catch them again on Unleashed Sundays at 1 p.m. SLT.
Aaron's Domain is a SL-themed server for friends, family, and the SL wrestling community. They have all sorts of channels and categories that may pique your interest and are currently tied to several other feds in the SL community, whether Rain works there or not. They do show their support for the family in the best way that they can. If you wish to become a member and join us, feel free to ask herself or Chrissy, and they will get back to you. Welcome to the Aaron family, and the door is always open.
Premier Wrestling is Second Life's leading federation for virtual sports entertainment, where passion meets performance, and the spotlight's not just on the ring, it's on you. We're recruiting now. Wrestlers, commentators, managers, referees. If you've got the drive, we've got the platform. With 4 electrifying weekly shows, Overload, Attitude, Rise, and ABW, Premier isn't just entertainment, it's a movement, a community, a gateway to the virtual world, proudly partnered with Linden Labs. Whether you're here to compete, perform, or elevate the action behind the scenes, there's a place for you in the Premier family. Step into the story. Visit premier-wrestling.com and join the action.
Sponsors. All right, and we are back, and once again, we are honored to have the one and only Alpin Criss in the studio with us, and he has been answering not only questions that were submitted before, but some new ones that have come up. And I wanted to touch on a couple of things here. You mentioned a little bit ago, you've been able to get around to some of the feds and see some of the shows and things like that. Now, I won't lie, the other night, I did happen to see you at a premiere show because it was Monday night. I just happened to be glancing around because I was part of the show. As far as that show, and I'm not even talking about myself or my segment, but as far as that show, what did you like and what did you not like about it?
Oh, I mean, the premiere shows are the ones I've been able to really see because they have that 1 o'clock start time, and I'm usually doing work overnight or, working most nights. So I'm not able to see. I'd love to be able to go see some of the events that are, 5 SLT, 6 SLT. It just, with my life, the way it's structured, I'm just not able to do it. I wish I could see more. And I do catch the videos online when they post them, if they do the taping like Premiere does. But for me, seeing the premiere shows, it's just neat seeing kind of all the production stuff. I love they do the like pre-taped vignettes. I know Paul, you've been featured in some.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna reveal the plot lines or anything because everybody can check out those videos. But again, it's just all the creativity that goes into the shows, all the talent, doing that extra stuff. Because it is an extra layer of talent, to be able to film that stuff and make it look as good. And you guys make some of those spots look really, really good. So I've enjoyed the shows. The matches have all been, pretty top notch. I mean, if I were to be critical, I'd say the only things I would be critical of is I think they need to ban or get rid of the dodge roll or whatever that thing is. Like one of the events I saw, like the guys were spamming the dodge roll, and I was like, "Am I watching Elden Ring or am I watching pro wrestling? I don't know what's going on here." Rolling all over the place. And it looks cool, but again, it's like one of those things where, like, guys, somebody be the pro wrestler. The other guy can roll around and be kind of the cool, evasive guy, but they were both doing it. And I saw it in multiple matches. So again, it's one of those things where figure out who's doing what, and don't let something that looks cool on one character, don't just adopt it because it looks cool on them. Let them have it. I mean, sometimes you got to be like, okay, this guy is going to be known for that. That's kind of camaraderie that real pro wrestling had. You weren't going to take someone's gimmick unless there was a reason to, or they let you do it. But protect each other's gimmicks a little bit. And then probably the other thing is just general, again, this is why I advocate doing more freestyle wrestling. Like, a lot of the matches are really good with movement, but you can still tell those matches where they just kind of potted plants. And this is something when I was teaching wrestling or showing people how to wrestle, I always tried to promote your spots should be about movement, not just about moves. So it's not, do this sequence of spots or moves. It's like, okay, I'm going to chop you 3 times. You're going to end up in the corner. Or I'm going to do this move and you're going to roll out of the ring. I'm going to follow you out of the ring. We're going to do this spot out of the ring. You move to the north side you know what I mean? Like have a destination every spot or every 2 or 3 spots so that you're not spending the whole match in one corner of the ring or in the center of the ring. Cause that motion of moving around is what makes it look real and makes it look natural as far as, it can in Second Life. But, that's the only thing that stands out when I see people do a match. It can have all these great elaborate spots and reversals and all that stuff. And, they even do rope shoots, but they'll do a rope shoot and they'll end up in the exact same spot they've been standing for the last 8 minutes. And it's like, oh man, just somebody dive out of the ring or do something to get some motion going here. So you guys are actually in a different location. And I think that would help some of the matches as well. But again, that's just kind of experience. And I think part of that's just off of, if they did a little more free form wrestling and, instead of just doing the designing, instead of doing the HUDs like they do now, where they're doing, 5 or 6 moves in a single emote, have 2 versions, have your gestures that are set up like that for your, prime time matches you're taping, and then have a simple move set that you have that you can deactivate all your other stuff. And you can do your simple move set where you can call a match on the fly. And you don't have 30 offensive moves. You have like 2 punches or 2 strikes. You have a couple grapples. You have a couple stretches or locks or whatever. And then you have to go in there and you have a couple pins or whatever. And then you just go in with somebody and call a match on the fly. You don't get, just like we did at the first version of system. It's part of what I think helped those wrestlers develop, a lot of those old timers. Cause it was like, they didn't have as much stuff to play with. So they had to use what they had and they had to use it creatively. And I think a lot more stuff was less pre-written back then. And I think that skill would give some people a little bit better. I think it'd help them form their matches a little bit better because the matches are entertaining, but it's like, again, learn how to work the whole ring, work all the areas of the ring, and I think it'd be more appealing, I think, for the audience.
We lose
Hello?
you? Oh,
Oh, I'm still here. Yeah, no,
I
I
thought your
kind of
mic
threw my
dropped.
thoughts. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was sitting thinking. It's like he was talking, all of a sudden he just dropped. Like, okay,
Yeah.
what?
Sorry. But yeah, no,
Okay.
yeah, I think
All right.
I think a lot of what I've seen with the shows are really good. Like I said, I think a lot of the animations and custom stuff the guys are doing are great, but a lot of the fundamentals, can still be worked on. And I think, part of that is due to they're kind of in big match mode, especially when they're in the middle of a season like I know Premiere is right now. I hope, and when I'm hanging around the practice area or the training area, I try to get people in the ring every once in a while and just do some free form wrestling, so you can come up with spots. But I would say, play around with it, get something programmed into your system so that you can do stuff more on the fly, and then practice some matches like that, or practice some, spots like that where you're not just following a note card on one of your other screens. You're literally just trying to work with a guy and come up with stuff on the fly. And, might start out a little rougher, and you won't have the same arsenal as you normally do. But in the end, I think it'll make you a better wrestler, because, like I said, what happens when you're in the middle of a match and half your moves stop working because of some SL glitch or whatever, you got to roll with that. And if you don't know how to call a match or don't have anything programmed where you can just throw simple strikes or do something simple, you're going to be frozen because it's like, oh, what do I do? I don't have a macro for that.
Yeah.
Very true. And we do know that if something can happen, it more than likely will happen in SL.
Usually does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I want to talk about, since you mentioned it several times, about the new system that you have coming out.
Plug. Thank you.
I'm just saying, for the new system that you have coming out, the one that most of us use, which is the Prime HUD, it has the ability to do they do updates to it, periodically. I don't know how long it's been since they've done one, but they also have that ability where they can where you can transfer moves from one to the other. If you're moving from one system to another one, they have a special prim with the script in it. Are you going to offer the same thing where you can get moves transferred over? Are you going to have preloaded moves, and anything that you have, you just have to buy it and drop it into it? How's that going to work?
Well, that's a great question. Am I going to do anything at Advance? Not in any near time future, because this HUD operates vastly different than what the other HUDs operate. So it's not a gesture-based HUD at all. Although you will be able to do some stuff through gestures if you want to. Really, my idea is if you're going to use gesture-based HUD, you can use a Prime HUD. Like, I'm not trying to wipe out the Prime HUD or wipe out the G3 or whatever guys want to use. So kind of replicating the stuff they do well, it seems like that would be kind of like, hey, I'm trying to get rid of it. And, I've talked to LG and some of the other HUD creators as well. So it's like, once ACPWS is in a state where it's functional and it's where I'm happy to where I can do like a general release, like a version 1.0, I'm going to work with them to get some script or something that allows some of the unique functionality of the ACPWS to be kind of linked into the Prime and some of these other HUDs if their creators are reaching out to me. But as far as like being able to load your own moves, you can load your own moves. So basically you'll be able to load your own moves, and then you can program your own moves. Instead of using a gesture, you'll use a note card, and you'll have instructions on what specific commands do what, but you can go through and you'll, just like you do creating the steps for your gestures where you play a sound, a chat command over a certain channel, or start an animation. For this, it'd be start a local animation or a target animation. And it'd also include all the real life viewer stuff, like rotate them 90 degrees, have them follow you, have them stay oriented so they're always facing you. And there's all sorts of little extra functions that are padded into the ACPWS, and you'd be able to trigger all those as well using those note cards. And basically what you do is you create a move in a note card, like let's say the, Alpin Criss knee drop, and then I'll do all the steps in the note card. And then when I go into the HUD, I can edit one of 4 buttons. And in each button, for each button, you'll click the button and hold it down. And then whenever you do a directional button, like say, a diagonal right or diagonal back right or back, if you hit one of those commands, you'll perform whatever move is associated with that direction. Probably sounds more complex than it actually plays out, but basically you can load your animations in, and then you can just copy and paste your note card to whatever corresponding note card is in the HUD that is for that direction. And then you can kind of pre-program your HUD with all the custom moves you want, and you can have your own animations in there. I will and am working on a basic move set. And like I said, my idea is to have a basic move set that will have, what I would consider like a jobber move set, where you have all the basic moves and pins and all the basic strikes and grapples that would allow you to put on just a solid match, all the basic stuff. And then if people want to do all the, much more fancier stuff, they can throw those animations in, or they can even upgrade the move animations and not even use any of mine. But it will be customizable. Will you be able to just put your Prime HUD down and put another prim and then put an ACPWS and somehow it'll transfer all that? No, there'll be some manual stuff. But again, it's not one of the things where you'd have to do one or the other. If you want to use the ACPWS, you'll be able to do that. If you want to use the ACPWS with a Prime HUD so that you can still do the macros, you'll be able to do that. I'm not trying to override what's been done and done well. I mean, it makes no sense for me to try to make macros or anything into my HUD because Prime HUD already does it great. So I'm not reinventing that wheel because it does it better than I could probably do it. But what my HUD does do is, a lot of the AO, like with the crawling and a lot of the ring interactions, like climbing up the posts and rolling out of the ring and climbing through the ropes and rope shooting and all that's way more easier. And so you don't need macros to do that stuff anymore, because you can literally do it kind of organically with a button press. And I think it'll look a little more natural, a little more fluid with the stuff you can do.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, he, I don't know if you saw this or not, but Mike actually put in another question. We tried to limit everybody to 2. But Mike, he doesn't know how to count.
I think we got time.
Yeah, well, we might be able to, but I mean, we all know Mike. He can't count to 21 unless he's in the shower, so his arithmetic's not really that great. But let me scroll back up here and find it where he said that he actually had another question for you. Here it is. What was your favorite match during the Cath Tribute Show? Because I know some of them blew you away.
I mean, I had to
not that
remember
Mike,
who was
not
in it.
that Mike, not that Mike is wanting you to, just to name, put you under the microscope and name what your favorite match was. So
It was our match, Mike. Obviously, it was our match. No, I feel like it was the second match. The first match was good, and then in the second match, I forget who was in it. I want to say, was Baza in it or somebody? Like, I can't remember who was in it right now, but was it Henry and Jacko? Then it probably wasn't that one. What was the third match?
You're saying that Baza was in it?
I can't remember. Like, there's one set of guys that I think was like Drew and Mythel. Thank you. That was it. Drew Ski and Mythel. That match, because I hadn't seen all the animations and stuff, and they went in there, and I'm, here I am like, yeah, me and Mike are going to, have this awesome match. And then I saw those guys and they're moving, again, the thing that I can, tell from a good wrestler versus, wrestlers that are still just kind of like, just kind of running the system is like, when I watch guys and they're moving around the ring and they're all over, they're outside, they're on the apron, they're, going all over the place and their spots move. and it feels kind of like it's using all the ring area. Those guys were all over the place. And then they had all the new custom moves, which I'd seen some of them because I've seen Mike's animations, and I was like, oh, those look great. And then I saw those guys and I was like, oh my God, this looks really good. And I think they did a wonderful job with their match. And, it's one of those things where you're watching and you're like, damn, I should have gone in front of these guys because I don't want to be out of there after these guys.
Well, it doesn't make, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Because when I came back and I started watching some stuff, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I got to keep up with this. So yeah. I'm with you. All right. Well, now you have another question and wants to know, how did you like how the referees went with that show?
Well, I know me and Mike's referee did a great job. I think
just go ahead and tell Kimberly how great she was.
Oh, Kimberly did great.
That's all. That's all you had to do.
That's all I had to say. What I would say is, and again, for what it was, not having seen any of the wrestling and seeing a lot of the stuff that's going on, like, I think a lot of the stuff at the charity match was super high level. At the end of the day, you're just like, God, I hope I didn't stink up the thing. But it was a lot of fun, and seeing all the people that put time in to do those matches and do pretty impressive matches all around. I mean, the girls' match at the end and all that was fantastic. So, just getting to see that and be part of it again, I was smiling the whole night, and getting to wrestle Mike. I mean, obviously me and Mike's match was my favorite because I haven't done it in so long, and just getting to go back out there again. And like I said, I didn't get to do it that much when I was actually, running the SLCW, and getting to actually go out there and perform again after some time, and remembering, all the fun it is getting out there and doing it. And, the hair raising moments when something doesn't go right, like the rope, the invisible wall for the ropes doesn't trigger right, or whatever problems happen.
Yeah. Like we never had issues like that.
Yeah, no, it's every time, every event. It's like, what the heck happened? But, dealing with that, and that's what I try to remind guys that are getting into this. It's like, your memories are going to be the time something screws up and your guy's trying to cover it. Whatever screws up out there, that's going to be what you remember about the match. You're not going to remember all the stuff that went smooth, and, you kind of got to laugh and have fun with it, when something does go bogus. And, we've seen everything. I mean, you get people that basically, de-res in the middle of a match, and, you hear the announcers trying to cover it like, oh, they're hiding under the match. Or you get the people that, just lag out into the space or whatever. Like, I've seen so many random things happen during these things. But that's kind of all my memories are a lot of that stuff. Like, we're laughing when somebody, there used to be this stupid gesture that was like a Star Trek gesture that was like, I'm Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise, and it was at this like dabbing type dance. And I remember being at a show and somebody accidentally had that queued up, and when they hit their button for like a rope shoot or something, it went into that. And I remember the announcer was Ivan, and he's like, what in the hell is going on? Like, he's playing this stupid gesture. Then everyone was cracking up and thought it was hilarious. Just at how mad Ivan got, because he was kind of in the moment, like, geez, we gotta make sure these gestures are right. But at the end of the day, that's what I remember, was that I don't remember any of the matches on that show or who won or who did what. I just remember, and it was Ari Lane that did it. So I'm gonna go ahead. And it was probably one of the funniest things I think I've seen, especially of my old memories back then. It's like, that was hilarious.
Well, it's always, like I said, it's always the goof ups, because one of the, as we mentioned before, X and I, we had a match, and it was a stretcher match at what used to be called FPV's, the Reef Reviews. And at the end of the match, okay, he won the match, and at the end of it, he was trying to push me, on the stretcher like he was supposed to. All of a sudden, we lagged out, and we ended up looking like that, like the silhouette, like a funky silhouette of the ET against the moon. The scene from E.T. where they went up and they went in front of the moon and all that. That's basically what we ended up doing with him, pushing a gurney with me, or a stretcher with me on it. We ended up somehow or another up in the moon. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, I get it. I completely get it.
Yeah, no,
all right.
Those are all the great memories. Yeah, I think talk to any wrestler on here and trade stories about the stuff that happened that was ridiculous and wasn't planned and was just like
Absolutely.
all the stuff that I think in the moment you're tearing your hair out. You're like, oh my God, the ring's not working. The rope's
Mhm.
not going phantom. We can't pass through the ropes. Or somebody got launched 100 feet into the air by some weird thing that happened, and it's like, oh Jesus. And you're just like, just keep moving, move past it.
All right, we have come to the end of our time for this episode, but Alpin, definitely want to thank you for coming back and answering the questions we did not get to earlier and answering the new questions that came up through our conversations. Always a pleasure. Always open to have you to come back because your conversations are just outstanding. So we could just listen to more of your stories.
Agreed.
I love chatting with you guys more. I think you guys definitely sometime need to do like one of those watch alongs or something. I'd love to join you guys on that. And watch some old wrestling, some Memphis wrestling or something, and just kind of, why not? They do it on all the other podcasts. I'm like, that's hilarious. We could talk about stuff we remember and mark out a little bit.
All right, we'll set something up for that. We definitely will. But we want to thank you for coming back. Good luck with everything, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing you back in the ring. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you all next time. And Happy New Year once again.
See you later, everybody.
Everybody.